Hey guys, so hopefully those of you in the US had a nice Memorial weekend. I went to the beach. My cousins have a beach house, and I'm lucky enough to be able to go there pretty often, and it was chill. Weather wasn't great, so just hung out inside for the most part. Didn't sleep a lot, so I'm actually quite tired. I also have an insight I want to share, and the insight is not very clear. I'm going to be working through it with this video. So there's the fact that I'm very tired and want to go to sleep right now, and the fact that I don't really know how to phrase this insight very well. Combine those two, we're probably going to get a mediocre video. Let's get right into it. So I was sitting around with some people who I wouldn't think are very deep people, or man, I'm trying to phrase this in a way that doesn't make me sound like a complete asshole. They're just people who I don't really think, are, or just not super deep thinkers. Maybe they're in their own way, you could say. But also, I noticed that there's still depth to them. Just like I have my own sense of who I am, and there's consciousness, right? There's a conscious person inside Simon Baton. There's also consciousness, and well, I'm not going to go that far, but there's a sentience, which means like a sense of I am inside all other people as well, regardless of how spiritual they are or how smart or intelligent they are. Every human being, I would think, unless they're extremely mentally impaired, has a sense of I. And I don't mean I like your eyeball, I mean I as in I am. In other words, everyone has awareness of their own consciousness, which I believe is what sentience means. The reason I'm bringing that up is because, at least personally, I've noticed a tendency in the past where if I, for some reason, I determine as if I'm the expert that other people aren't deep, they're not deep thinkers or deep feelers. A lot of sort of I don't know what the word would be, just sort of like I think of them like, oh, these people aren't deep thinkers, I don't really want to hang out with them, which is obviously extremely naive because every single person is, they have consciousness. They're like sentient, and which means there is the potential for depth at the very least, even if they're not aware of their own potential for depth. Also, it's not necessary to have depth at all. That's not what I'm saying. You can see how amazing this video is going so far. The point I'm making is, you, as someone who is interacting with other people, have the opportunity to see the best in everyone. I don't mean the best qualities per se. Everyone's a mix of qualities, and whether you call them good or bad is relative to different situations. Some qualities are almost always bad, you could say, but I'm not talking about qualities. I'm talking about just that thing that I am, that everyone has. That is essentially the same experience. If you strip away every part of your ego, every part of what you think you are, your identity, every part of, yeah, just your identity, your ego, your physical manifestation of I'm a male who's 6'2" and I have hazel eyes. If you strip away all that stuff, everyone's experience is pretty much the same thing. It's just a consciousness and an understanding that we are conscious. That's sentience. Everyone shares that experience. It's the same thing. Everyone has I am as their experience. You can see out of your own eyes. Everyone else can see out of their own eyes. It's the same experience. Ultimately, like ultimately speaking, the only thing dividing us is literally just our corporeal body, our ego, these things. So when I say seeing the best in people, I mean that you could, if you'd like to, you could make a conscious effort to actively see that in other people. See the thing that you share with them, which is consciousness. That also applies to animals, but it just came to mind when I was sitting around with these people because I wouldn't consider them spiritual or deep, but they still have depth. Like depth is an innate, it's an innate human characteristic because we're channels for consciousness. Yeah, I don't mean to get too woo woo here. The reason I'm wanting to do this more myself is, for one, when you can connect to people's depth, their innate consciousness better, you see them in a better light. You're more compassionate. You're more understanding. You're better able to help them, both practically speaking, but also when you see people by default as better or at their best, I believe that this actually helps them become closer to that, which better in this case means for them less suffering, more, less in their own heads, more them. You being able to see that, I think, helps people and also helps yourself, because you're not constantly blocking yourself with like judgments of other people. You're just there with them and accessing them better. I'm going to bring up something that just came to mind. I'm not sure how exactly it applies here, but when we talk about relationships, particularly romantic relationships, I think, at least from my experience, it's becoming better understood that it's unlikely that we will find a single person who checks all of our boxes 100% perfect. It's extremely rare, if not completely unlikely. And even if we find that person, they have other options too. So the odds are heavily stacked against you there. If you're looking for a partner, you're likely going to have a couple of things that are non negotiable, and then the rest are sort of compromise and you kind of deal with them. That's just realistic in a time span of a human life. Finding that kind of person is more likely to spend your whole life with. And the reason I bring that up is because in those kinds of relationships, there will be things you're not happy with. And there's multiple people who could potentially fit that role, where they hit the marks you really want, but there's a bunch of stuff which maybe you don't like. And I think that's likely. But you can still develop the skill of seeing past that stuff and seeing into them, like the deepest part of them. That's a skill to develop. It's a skill that for some people it's easier to, like, there's certain people who I see who I can see that better for because there's less in the way. And then there's certain people who I have my own preconceived judgments. Maybe they have their own preconceived judgments that makes it harder for us to connect, whether it's a romantic relationship or just a stranger or a family member or a friend. I don't know how to connect the dots there. I'm super tired, but what I'm saying is, I believe seeing the best in people, seeing to that thing that you share, which is consciousness, I am. If you can see that or build upon that skill day to day and work on seeing that in other people, I think that will lead to more happiness. I think that will lead to more understanding, compassion. It will lead to better relationships. It'll lead to a lot of good things, is what I'm saying. I think I don't want to make this a moral thing. I think that's not really the point of these videos and what I'm trying to do here. But for me personally, I just have the sense that I can begin to drop judgments. I'm not saying not to have an accurate view of how somebody is. I think it's important to understand somebody's qualities and what kind of qualities might be pleasant or unpleasant or helpful to others or unhelpful to others, annoying. These aren't things that I'm saying should be ignored, but I do think that seeing through all of that, like find the thread that connects to their depth, that's a very valuable skill. Not ignoring what exists, but being able to penetrate through that anyway to generate, I don't know, I don't want to use too many fluffy words like compassion, but yeah, I just think this is an amazing skill that I want to personally develop. I wish I could have phrased this better. I think I did okay, actually, to be honest. I don't think this was a horrible video. Did decent, 10 minutes long, not bad. Great, I'm super tired. I am going to probably just shower and go to sleep and sleep like 9 hours. It'll be good. Yeah, thanks for watching, guys.